Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got a great one for you today. We're going to be hearing from the Corda developer himself, Quincy Jones. He's been making a heck of a name for himself out here, and we are going to hear some more information today that I think is going to rock you. He's going to talk about his thoughts and insights about Bitcoin and the network. We're also going to hear about XDC smart contracts, XLM, and what he thinks could drive the price of XRP and how high it could drive the price as well. Let's go ahead and roll that beautiful intro.
This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove, and everything that we're talking about here, we are going to take a look at this. First of all, shout out to Reborn13 for this interview, and shout out to Matty GTV for the interviews he's posted as well. This guy's making a great name for himself really quickly here, and I tell you, it's really exciting. I've started communicating with him, so you know what that means. Watch out for a great conversation. We're going to be hooking it up, and I can't wait to sit down with this guy. He has such an incredible insight. Let's go ahead and get started here. I want to play for you, so there's a lot to go through here. So I'm going to try to move through it quickly so you can get most of what he's saying and the insights here. And again, shout out to Reborn 13 or Reborn 13. Let's go give him a subscribe. I'm going to subscribe to his channel right now. He's got 7,045. Let's get it up. All boats rise. Let's hit him with a subscribe button here. So thank you to Reborn 13 for this conversation here. He's going to talk in this particular conversation about the problems with the Bitcoin network and the scaling issues. And you are going to really, I think, if you ever wanted someone to clearly tell you what's the problem with the Bitcoin network, you're about to hear it right here. Here we go.
Nail on the noggin, because I'm about to make a world-shattering claim about Bitcoin. I'm dead serious, and people need to clip this. People need to talk about this, because I need somebody smart to help me figure out the math problem to really show people the scaling problem of this. But basically, the general gist of it is Bitcoin can't scale past 10% of the global population because it would cost more power to generate than there is power on the planet to run the Bitcoin network. Wow. And because of the exponential scaling problem of the power consumption of Bitcoin, it will hit a brick wall where it comes down to either you're going to have the electrical infrastructure run the Bitcoin network, or it's going to run everything else, because it's not going to be able to run both because it's an exponential scaling problem. And you can see the problem play out now. Less than 0.01% of the global population even talks about Bitcoin or even owns Bitcoin, yet it literally consumes a little less than 1% of the global energy consumption. If you scale that up, and it scales exponentially, a little less than 1% of the global use case using Bitcoin would end up being around a little under 8% of the total amount of energy that the entire world would produce. And if it went up to, so if you had the entire 10%, if you had 10% of the entire global population use Bitcoin, it would cost over 50% of all the energy outputted by the entire planet to run that 10%, or to run that the Bitcoin network for that 10% of the population that's using it.
That is incredible, as Reborn 13 says there. He's laying it down to you, I think, about as clear as you can possibly have it laid down. I mean, now this is somebody who works, on these protocols. Let me just play a little more of what he says here. He really brings it home. I'm not kidding.
Insane.
Yeah, it's an exponential scaling problem, and people get all upset about it because they're like, oh, well, all these other systems use all this other energy, and it's like the Bitcoin network has it's an exponential energy scaling problem, and it's going to break at some point. And we saw this in Iran. Iran had power outages because the electrical infrastructure couldn't handle the Bitcoin miners mining how much power that it was. Imagine, it's almost like this. Imagine trying to run too much power out of your house and you blow a fuse. Well, imagine doing that on an exponential scale, because the Bitcoin network requires more and more and more power to run the same network for the same amount of quality that you're getting out of the network. And if anything, it gets worse because the network gets crowded and slow, causing the power usage to go through the frame. It's insane. Yeah. And yeah, people need to talk about this. And And I'm trying to figure out the math on this because it's not too hard, but I want to really show like the scaling, like this percent to this percent, this percent to this percent. Yeah. But that's the thing. If you look at 10%, if you scale out what it would take for 10% of the world to use it, you'd realize halfway through the math problem that it would literally take up more power than there is. Yeah. Like this, like, you'd be going like, damn, this is a serious amount of zeros that I'm laying out here. How much power can be produced? And that's the thing. People already know this. It takes just as much power to run the Bitcoin network as it does to run the entire Netherlands. People like to make excuses like it's green energy. That is a bold-faced lie. That is you can do the math on it. Do the math on it, how much power would run the Bitcoin network, and then how much math that you could get out of a really, really, really efficient green energy, whatever. Do the 100% most efficient green energy power way, whatever, and scale that up to the entire Bitcoin network and tell me how much of that you need, because it's not possible. Hands down.
Wow, I got to be honest. I love this guy's passion, and you could tell he understands this stuff so well. He's really laying it down here. This guy's really got the passion. I'm not kidding. All right, let's keep this moving because I actually want to go back here to an earlier part, and let me set this up here right about here. I better go here. All right, let me let this play through here. And you're going to hear him now. Let's go back. So he gives you the problem with Bitcoin. So now I want to go back and take you to the front where he talks about the fact that, the real tokens with use case won't compete with each other. They will work around the markets that are developed around them because they have use case. This is something we talk about all the time, but I love the way he says it. Listen to this.
Something fell here.
It's all good.
I don't really think they're entirely competing with each other when it comes to the overall adoption and use cases. It's more of like, what are you going to do with it, and what type of market's going to develop around those use cases, of what you can do with these certain platforms, because they all have an edge over their certain use cases, and they're all going to have a certain market for that edge. So it's one of those things where I kind of just dove into it, like really got into the technology and started just adopting that into some of the applications I've just been building just in general,
Nice, man. What instantly...
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So you hear what he's talking about here is that he's talking about tokens with real use case won't really compete with one another because markets will develop around that use case. Just saying it that way, and we've said it a bunch of ways on this channel, but just saying it that way to me makes it so much more clear to understand just exactly how to see the different tokens and their use case and utility that they have, and how that will rise to the surface. I've talked about for a long time about the new watermark for this crypto space being use case utility, and that's exactly what he's talking about here. And at some point that is going to happen in this space. There will always be a portion of this market that's going to be speculative. People will release new products and projects all the time. But there will come a time, and I don't believe in the not too distant future, where you're going to see for the real first time, because unfortunately Bitcoin failed in its original use case to be a currency and retreated to what everyone calls a store of value digital gold. But it failed at its original attempt for a use case. So at the end of the day, I believe we're very close to having the legislation and then the regulation from there that allows the techs or the technology and the tokens out here that can actually provide a use case and utility like XLM, XRP, XDC. By the way, none of this is financial advice, but this is what we're talking about here. So let's move to another section here that is just absolute fire. And you're going to love this. Reborn 13, ask him, what is the potential for price when it comes to XRP? And I'm going to tell you, he is about to give you, and obviously it's his speculation on working with the tech and seeing what it can do, understanding what he understands from a developer level, which is extremely deep and intricate. And listen to what he says here about what he believes for the potential for XRP price. And believe me, he's touching on some things that we discuss about what can really help formulate the price for XRP. Listen.
Push and adoption. And like you said, this has been I've actually gone through a lot of the bank literature to see like what's up with a lot of this. And they've been talking about a lot of these programs since 2004, but really seriously since like 2013.
Yeah.
And they actually had a plan. The Federal Reserve had a plan to launch this digital currency system in 2020, but then COVID happened, I guess. So we're now on hiatus or whatever. But there definitely is. It's nothing. It's not even to really get like too speculative about it. There is a plan to move to the FedNow payment system, which is basically going to operate the domestic ISO payments between all the domestic remittances within banks. You can look up all this stuff. It's quite interesting. They got it on the Federal Reserve website.
Yeah.
And so and that's the thing. You may be going, well, so what's with CBDCs and what's with the FedNow system? And it's so silly because it's kind of like it's kind of one of the biggest things that's right out there in the open. But Ripple is on one of the currency boards when it comes to the Federal Reserve, and they're the only blockchain company when it comes to that currency board. And I'll actually send you some documents when it comes to that too. And they're not the only ones. JP Morgan's try to put out a coin, Hyperledger Frameworks try to put out, but XRP is not the only one when it comes to decentralized ledger technologies to put their hat in the ring when it comes to what technology should be adopted. And this is where Corda comes into play too, because Corda and Hyperledger Framework are the two primary smart contract platforms that the central banks are planning on using when it comes to instituting the smart contract platforms to run the banking system.
Wow, that's big. Now, that was a different clip than I thought I was going to play you, and I'm about to play you that clip right now. But that sets the tone for how far are we in this blockchain adoption. And he reveals that the Fed, we've covered here heavily here, the Federal Reserve, as far as I'm concerned, commissioned this to be done. And I believe he's explaining to you in his own way that exact same thing when it comes to the use of Ripple and XRP. So let me get now this clip lined up. This is where I wanted to bring you right here, and I want to take you to now this is where he gives his thought on what XRP could be in price and some of the things that would drive the price for XRP. Absolutely astounding here.
A huge thing with that too. So one thing I definitely wanted to say this too on your channel, I want this to echo through the XRP community, because it will excite people, but at the same time sort of make them go, what? So anybody out there that's telling you they'll know where the price of XRP will go has no idea. Absolutely zero clue. But I'll give you a tiny hint of an idea of what could happen. So XRP it's a financial instrument of value. And that instrument is basically, the instrument's really liquidity between different other instruments like bonds, stocks, currencies, everything basically.
Yeah.
And the XRP is only worth the value of the things that are issued on it, because it would cost XRP to buy those things on the network and use that liquidity. So what ends up happening here is not only do you have to issue all of the equity, but you've also got to issue all of the debt. So XRP is only bound by the fiscal responsibility of the people that issue assets on it, which is obviously irresponsible. So XRP could be at $100, $100,000, $1 million. It depends on how many assets you want to issue onto the network. So if you wanted to issue, $100 trillion worth of equity, cool. That's a lot of money on the network. What happens if they want to issue another $500 million worth of debt? That also adds value to the network. So there really is a mind-blowing amount of wealth, essentially, that could basically be flowing through these networks that we can't even comprehend because of that debt question of being able to issue more and more and more value in the form of debt and being able to leverage that.
That is a remarkable statement. And I have to say, I cannot wait to get together to speak with Quincy about this particular topic and so many other things. But he talks about that. We've talked about putting debt on the ledger, on the XRP, moving the stress of the debt from the government fiat money onto this new asset as one of the ways that they could really make sure. I mean, what he's talking about here is that there's no limit to price, because it's basically how much do you want to put in equity? How much do you want to put in assets, right? You know, how much do you want to have in debt on the network? It really creates a situation where there's no limit to the price of what XRP could go to. What's interesting about this is, well, it's many things, but what's interesting about this for me is that we've talked about the idea of putting debt onto XRP and moving that pressure off the fiat government money of the world, digitized or not. And obviously it will be digitized. But one of the other things that's amazing about this is that if you pick a said amount of assets and debt to express that on the ledger, then you can absolutely guarantee that there will be a price floor on this open asset. And then you can guarantee a certain level of price of the token, which I believe becomes a very key component as to why banks would use it. It would be the most reliable liquid asset, safest settling asset in the world. And not only that, when I think about the way you could lay that out, if we're talking about placing debt on it, this thing looks more and more, when I think about a Gary Gensler SEC, this starts to look a lot more like a bond to me. You know, that's what they do when they spread out their debt, right? They buy up their own bonds, they sell their own bonds. What are they doing? They're selling their debt, right? That's what's happening. And in this particular instance, it looks like there is a path forward to be able to move the debt over to this asset, alleviate the stress on the government dollars of the world, and off we go. And what's interesting about this is it's a natural, organic way of driving the price of an asset that really never existed before, even though it's been around for 8, 12 years, whatever it is now. But the reality here is that you can't print money and make the price, because it doesn't hold, right? You can't inflate the price. But when you do things in a manner like this, you can create the value. Just like if you were to have a parcel of land and then build the house on the land, it's worth a lot more with the house on it than it is with the land by itself. Just a simple, analogy there. But this to me is pretty remarkable, because I think this started when, all of this is ringing in my mind, and it's fascinating to hear about. There's really no limit to XRP price. It could be $100. It could be $100,000 and more and more and more. That's the point. But the real point here is let's look at this and pull back. Let's go up 10, 20,000 feet and get the overview and say, well, how does Gary Gensler see this today? Because we know how he saw it a couple years ago. I played you in the video from yesterday that Gary Gensler, in fact, said that he thinks that Ripple is an unregistered security. He didn't say he believed the sales were, and I do believe he believes the sales from OTC are as well. But he believes that it is an unregistered security, the asset. He said it. I played it on the show yesterday. You can go watch the video. The question now remains, all of this being true and executable for them in the future, once we get the regulation and legislation in place, you have to ask yourself, what does Gary Gensler and the government and the Treasury all agree that XRP actually is? A currency, a convertible currency, or a bond? That's going to do it for me. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe and leave a comment below. Make sure you share with somebody and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Check out all the links in the description box and the comment section. They are trusted, vetted links of products and services that I use each and every day. Be careful what you click on out here. There's a lot of scams out here, people. Be very careful. I will catch all of you on the next one.